Thank you for checking out Lakehead International's videos. You're about to watch one of our Lakehead International live webinars, a fun and informative way to learn more about Lakehead while also meeting faculty, staff, and current students. If you have any questions throughout today's video, please comment below. Otherwise, let's get started.
As you prepare for your next academic journey, of course, an important part of your consideration is going to be where to study. And you've already identified Canada as one of the premier destinations for studying abroad, but I want to help you better understand as to why we feel Canada is a great option for international students choosing to study internationally. We hope that our students are able to thrive in a safe, peaceful, and inclusive society. Canada is recognized as one of the safest countries in the world, and we're also a fairly young country that celebrates both diversity as well as inclusion. So, as an international student, you should feel safe and welcomed in this happy and peaceful nation. We're also fairly proud of our rankings in terms of global standing. So we're the top 2 best countries in the world. We're in the top 11 most peaceful countries in the world. And Canada is actually ranked in the top 5 out of 89 on a list of the best countries for quality of life. Beyond those reasons, though, international students typically choose Canada because of the employment benefits. When you choose Canada, you're also choosing employment. So you'll have the opportunity to earn while you learn. You can take advantage of that, and you can use your study permit, which will allow you to actually work during your studies. So all international students are actually allowed to work up to 24 hours per week during the academic school year. And then any scheduled breaks, students can work full-time hours, which is pretty incredible so that you can help pay for the costs of your education, but also perhaps start to build a little bit of savings for your personal expenses and beyond that. When you also study in Canada, though, you are looking at perhaps what's next. And so you can gain the knowledge and the skills and experience for a good career back home, but perhaps you want to also stay here in Canada. So all of Lakehead's programs are eligible to be considered for the maximum postgraduate work permit, which is 3 years. This will give you, again, that opportunity to build knowledge and skills and experience in the Canadian workforce to perhaps go home with that and use that to your advantage, or in the next stage, if you would like to stay in Canada and become a permanent resident. By completing a Canadian university degree, you'll actually receive bonus points or extra points towards that PR application. Now, Canada is a very large country, and that all considering, we are located in the province of Ontario. And so our 2 hometowns are in Thunder Bay and Orillia. We are very proud of these hometowns. They're small and they're safe, and they're affordable for our students. But beyond that, Ontario itself is an incredible province. Our education system is second to none. We have a wealth of accredited universities. So all public universities in Ontario, including Lakehead, go through a rigorous quality assurance by the Ontario Ministry to ensure that the programs we deliver, the academics that we support, are top notch. As a province, we also have the highest employment rate for our graduates of Ontario universities. And so we have an employment ranking of 95.1% are receiving jobs within 2 years after graduation. And of course, an important consideration of moving and studying abroad is making sure that you're going to have a safe place to call home. And so housing is certainly available both on campus as well as off campus. There's ample opportunities for you in our hometowns of Thunder Bay and Orillia. Diving a bit deeper into Lakehead University, I want you to take a moment to consider we are a smaller institution with under 10,000 students, but we certainly pack a punch in terms of rankings. We're considered in the top 3 in Canada for research. We're the #1 university with under 10,000 students in North America. We're in Canada's top 5, pardon me, and we're actually the #1 in Ontario. And our employment rankings actually go above and beyond the Ontario average. At 97.4% of our students, or grads, I should say, are actually employed within 2 years after walking across that stage. Diving a bit deeper, as I noted, we're an Ontario accredited university with over 9,000 students, of which over 1,900 international students. So we're still very much a Canadian university, but a very diverse student population with over 80 nations represented in our student body alone. all of those students are studying a wide range of programming. And one of the best things about Lakehead is because we're a smaller institution, although diverse, we have a rich history of offering small classroom experiences, which we feel really builds on that academic experience and furthermore helps you secure incredible employment after that. With that being said, let's dive into today's presentation now. As we continue on our journey in exploring Lakehead, though, I would like to then introduce academics here, which of course is why you've most likely joined our webinar today to learn more about education. Taking a step back before we dive into education, I wanted to reveal our faculties of study. So we have business administration, engineering, science and environmental studies, natural resources management, social sciences and humanities, health and behavioral sciences, law, and graduate studies. Like I said before, though, today we're here to chat a bit about education and the programs we offer within that faculty. On the undergraduate side, we have concurrent education and consecutive education. On the grad side, we offer education for change for master's students, as well as educational studies for master's and doctoral students. So that's a quick preview. We're going to kick things off with our undergraduate guests, which is Dr. Wayne Melville, the Dean of the Faculty of Education. I'll pass it over to him to introduce himself, and we'll dive right into it.
So thank you, Jordan, and hello, valued viewers. So my name is Wayne Melville. I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Education, and from the accent, you can probably guess I'm not actually from Canada. I'm originally from Australia, where I taught high school for 17 years, moved to Thunder Bay in 2005, and pursued a career as a professor of science education before becoming Dean in 2019. And it's really my great privilege to lead a faculty made up of people who really care about our students. And that, I think, is one of the hallmarks of what we do. So welcome to our presentation. Hopefully you find it helpful. And by all means, if there are questions, I'm sure Jordan will be able to point you towards the right people who can answer all those.
Certainly, yes. Thank you for sharing more about your history and sort of how your career path led you to becoming the dean here at Lakehead. I know you have some important information to share about undergraduate programs, professional programs, and then we're going to actually dive a bit deeper into what those programs entail. So I'll pass it over to you to share more then.
So again, thanks. And so on the screen here, we have mention of the various programs that we have. Really, our education programs are in two parts. One is the undergraduate degree, which is a prerequisite to come into our Bachelor of Education program. And that is really designed to give you the content that you need if you're going to become a teacher, because teachers do need to know their subjects. The Bachelor of Education part of our program is really about helping you know how to teach, because it's one thing to know the subject, it's another thing to be able to communicate that material to your students. And so in our concurrent program, you enter into an undergraduate program, Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Arts and Sciences at our Aurelia campus. And once you've completed that program, you automatically move into the Bachelor of Education program. Consecutive is a bit different. That's designed for folks who already have an undergraduate degree, and you can apply to come straight into the Bachelor of Education program. All our teachers, all our graduates are certified by the Ontario College of Teachers, which means that they are certified to teach in Ontario, also across Canada and increasingly across the world as well. And so we have many of our alumni currently teaching in international schools on every continent, which you can name. So our people travel a long way and do a wonderful job, and we really value keeping in contact with those folks and hear where they've gone with their degree from our faculty. One final piece, if you have a background in trades, then we also have a technology education program as well, which has just started this year, and that allows people to be certified as technology teachers, again, in Ontario and across Canada. Moving right along, if we go into our two main divisions, these are based on the organisation of schools within Ontario. And so we certify people first up as primary junior teachers. And so the idea is that graduates from this program are certified to teach in elementary schools up to grade 6, and with some further qualifications can actually teach grades 7 and 8 as well. But we'll talk about additional qualifications later. And so with this program, in the undergraduate degree, which you need to complete, there is no specified course you need to follow, but it is important that you have a range of subjects, because as an elementary teacher, of course, you teach a range of subjects. And so that's an important point to consider. In line with government policy within Ontario, we do have a competency assessment because mathematics is an important skill which elementary students need to have. And so we need to ensure that people who graduate from our program are willing and able to teach math appropriately for elementary kids, because it does set them up for life. The PPOD program, we'll come to that in the next slide. And the primary junior program is available both in Thunder Bay and Aurelia. It is exactly the same program, and our instructors do talk to each other. So whatever is being delivered in Thunder Bay is also being delivered in Aurelia as well. If we move on to the PPOD program, the idea is that we need to have people who have experience in classrooms when they graduate. And so with this particular way of organizing our work, we team up with the local schools with the idea of conducting classes within those schools, and then also working with students on various things, literacy and numeracy and so on, which exposes people to working with people who in a few years' time are going to be their colleagues, getting to see how schools work, getting to see the reality that kids in elementary schools face, and then developing the skills needed to address teaching and learning, but also getting to see how theory and practice mesh together within the teaching profession, because it's important that people understand both sides of that theory and practice. Intermediate and senior is slightly different. Intermediate goes from grade 7 and grade 8, and then high school goes from grade 9 through to 12. And so graduates of this program really do specialize within their subject areas. And so we talk here about teachables. These are the courses which are offered in Ontario schools, and where it talks about having 5 full course equivalents and 3 full course equivalents. It means that you should be looking at your preferred subjects, and then what are the ones that you would most enjoy teaching, because we know that if people enjoy their work, then they don't actually go to work because they're doing what they love. The other key piece about intermediate senior teaching is, because you're teaching subjects, it is also important to keep in mind that once you graduate from our program, that you also keep learning, because if you think about it, the best teachers that you have are actually also very good learners as well. And so we ask you to pick 2 subjects, and that'll come up on the next slide. It doesn't actually matter what the combination is in most cases. We've had people who have been passionate about science, which I also am, but also things like history and geography. And so we do have a wide selection of courses you can choose from. And hopefully in the next couple of years, we'll be looking at extending this range. So you have it there in front of you: English, the sciences, the whole range of sciences are there. Languages, both French and Indigenous languages. The main one being offered in Thunder Bay and Aurelia is Ojibwe, because that is the territory on which we are located. The social sciences, so geography and history, of course. Health and physical education for those people who are looking at kinesiology or physical education degrees. And of course, mathematics and the arts, so visual arts and music and so on, because All of these areas are important within education in order to support programming in our schools, which touches on the main discipline areas. Okay, so if we move on, so a couple of things about what makes Lakehead and the Faculty of Education different is first up that we do offer a wide range of courses, as we just talked about, both in the theoretical and in the sense of the subjects that or teachables that we have. We also have a range of electives around environmental education, international education, mental health for teachers, literacy and numeracy. And so there is scope to develop in your own program in many ways to fit in with your interests and how you see your career developing. And of course, we do have the blend of the theoretical and the practical, which of course is important. The other piece which follows on from our programming, and I mentioned this earlier, were additional qualifications. So once you graduate and enter the teaching profession, it's important to keep in mind of how you want to see your career develop and also pursue the particular interests you have. And so our additional qualifications programs allow people to specialize in their subject areas, but also in areas such as student counseling, student health and wellness, providing for special education teachers, and if you're looking to move into leadership positions over the course of your career, we have programs which can help with that. And of course, they're also accredited by the College of Teachers. One of the great things about my job is I get to work with great people, both on the administrative side who do a lot of the background work, but also with our full-time faculty members and contract lecturers. And so we make sure that we hire people who are very good, both in terms of their content knowledge, but also very good in supporting people who are moving into the teaching profession. A lot of these folks are actually current teachers, and a number have recently retired, but it doesn't matter, what their background is. They're all passionate about the success of the students in their class. We also have 105 days of placement experience. The first 3 placement blocks are all in Ontario to offer experience within Ontario schools, because that is where we are accredited. And our 4th placement block is called the alternative placement, because it opens up opportunities for not just working in schools, but in other educational settings. And we'll explore that in a bit more detail in the next slide. And finally, we are working on maintaining, as far as possible, small class sizes to make sure that you know your instructors and that they know you as a person, because education at its core is really based around developing relationships with people. Quite simply, if you don't know the people in your class, you can't teach them to the best of your ability, and you can't get the best out of those folks. And so with that, we'll move on to my final slide, and then Jordan can take over again, because Jordan's really good at putting these things together. The last piece is for our, again, our placement opportunities. One of the things which has been restarted after the pandemic are our international placements. And so we have a coordinator who sets these up for you, so you don't need to go and do all the legwork, because we do that. It's all part of the service. And we look at where people want to go and match those as far as possible with our contacts across the world. And so in the last year, or actually these people are still on placement. This is how up to date we are. We've got folks in Peninsular Malaysia. We've got folks in St. Martin in the Caribbean. That's actually based through a connection with one of our alumni who's now teaching there. And we've also got people in the UK and 2 people who have actually gone back to Australia. And so when they announced they were going there, I did take it on myself to give them some lessons in how to talk like an Australian, so they felt right at home. this is all part of what we do as a faculty. Educating people who are going to go into schools and educate the next generation of students is really an important task, because students going through classes now are really going to have to deal with a lot of challenges in the future. And so our job is to help prepare people with both the knowledge and the temperament and the skills to actually address those concerns as they come up and contribute to a much better world. So on that cheery note, Jordan, I'm going to pass it back to you. And then if people have questions, by all means, please contact us in the Faculty of Education. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much for joining me, Wayne. I'm glad that you mentioned there's some students doing international teaching placements actively right now. One of the most exciting aspects of working on the team I do within international enrollment is hearing from students about how they heard about Lakehead. And oftentimes it ends up being that it was their teacher that told them about Lakehead. And then we think to ourselves, well, how did the teacher know about Lakehead? And lo and behold, it's an education student. It's someone who graduated from our Faculty of Education and has now gone to an international school around the world and has brought their Canadian curriculum and knowledge to deliver some high quality education in countries where we are actively in market. Alternatively, we've also even seen students that come up to us and we're at fairs and they say, hey, I had a student teacher that was from Lakehead. Which is so incredible to see that our smaller institution, although we're mighty but small, has some really far-reaching opportunities. So for those students that are, of course, considering either our consecutive education program or our concurrent education program, I encourage you, like Wayne said, to connect directly with our faculty to learn more, check out our website, explore, dig deep into what makes Lakehead unique and why we may be the best fit for you. However, we are going to transition here and move into our graduate studies where we'll explore education for change and educational studies with two of our other faculty members. So we'll meet you over there. And with that, it's my distinct pleasure to welcome and introduce our special guests from the Faculty of Education that's going to focus on graduate studies here. On that note, I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Meridith Lovell-Johnston and Dr. Gerald Walton. I'll pass it over to Meridith to begin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Meridith Lovell-Johnston. I go by Meridith. If you're not comfortable with that, Dr. Meridith is fine too. I'm an associate professor in the Faculty of Education. My research area is early literacy development and also educational technology. Within graduate studies, I'm the person that you would come to ask questions about the program, if you're applying to the program, or if you have any paperwork that needs to be processed, that can come through me too. And we're also very fortunate, and as a segue into Dr. Walton, to have dedicated coordinators at each of our campuses who can help you with talking about the program and advice about the program. So I will pass it off to Dr. Walton.
Thanks, Meridith, and thanks, Jordan, for putting all of this together. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Gerald Walton. Like Meridith, I don't tend to be too formal about things, so Gerald is perfectly fine, or if you insist, Dr. Gerald is also good. I'm a professor in the Faculty of Education. I am physically located at the Thunder Bay campus, but anyone can ask me questions about anything to do with the program structure of the MEd. So that's who I am, and that's why I'm here.
Well, thank you again for both of you joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you, and I know that you'll be able to enrich today's webinar and sharing your insight of the program structures and what students who have already applied can anticipate to expect in their degree experience. I'll pass it back over to Meridith to share more about graduate programs here at Lakehead, including both master's and doctoral level programs.
Thank you. So at Lakehead, we have 3 graduate programs in the Faculty of Education. Some of them have a little bit of overlap, some of them do not. I will say that by and large, most of our students, particularly our international students, apply into the educational studies stream. The educational studies stream is really very flexible. So there are some compulsory courses that we'll talk about coming up. But beyond that, the benefit is that you're able to take a variety of courses, follow your interests, and in areas like psychology or curriculum studies, no bias there for me, that's my area. But you can also take, courses. Sorry about that. So you can also take courses in a variety of other areas that are covered by Education for Change. But the point of educational studies is that it's very wide open. There's a lot of flexibility, a lot of your ability to choose the kinds of topics that you want to take classes about based on what we're offering. The second area, and one that I think that more of our international students might want to think about, is Education for Change. So Education for Change is really designed for students who really have a sense about social action, who are interested in, power or topics about equity or the environment. Indigenous education is one as well. So our Education for Change students are those who have a really strong connection to activism in a lot of cases. And so they're able to take courses, and they must specialize in one of three areas, which would be social justice education, which is usually the most popular, environmental and sustainability education, and Indigenous education. One of the things that I want to note, which is I think sometimes a little bit confusing for our international applicants, is that our Indigenous education stream really focuses on the experiences of North American Indigenous people and their history, and also from an educational perspective. So you're welcome to apply to any of those, but I know that that's something that sometimes confuses our students who are applying to the program. Now, if you're a master's student who has already been accepted to the program, and you've applied for educational studies, and you're really now interested in Education for Change, that's okay. One of the things that is really good about our program is that we're flexible. So coming to Lakehead and you're starting your first year and you take a class and it makes you really passionate about something, you're able to change between educational studies and Education for Change. So if that's something that you're thinking about early in your program, contact one of the graduate coordinators like Dr. Walton or myself. Will talk about it and talk about what that means for your program. But you are able to change. So if now you're thinking, I applied for educational studies and I didn't know about Education for Change, and that sounds interesting, we can have a conversation when you start the program and you come to campus. We also have a PhD program. So at Lakehead, we have a shared program with two other universities. And so each year we admit students, domestic students and international students, and their areas of focus are on cognition and learning. So that's also where my area is. Theories about learning and how learning happens, psychology is in there, social, cultural, and political context, which is actually our most popular area, which, similar to social justice education and environmental sustainability, covers those areas of the intersection between social issues and cultural issues, and politics and power and activism are all kind of in that area. And then leadership and policy studies. So a lot of people who come into our leadership and policy stream might be administrators or interested in being administrators within educational institutions. So we do have overlap in there, and what we're really interested in is making sure that your graduate experience really meets your personal goals and is something that's enriching for you.
Thank you for sharing more about that. As we transition and segue, dive a bit deeper, we'll first look at education for change, and then we'll also chat a bit about educational studies. On that note, education for change as well as educational studies do offer several different routes, including course, portfolio, or thesis. So looking at this slide here, this is of course that education for change program in the 3 routes. These are the calendared requirements in terms of how what you can anticipate you'll need to graduate. I'll pass it back over to our guests to share more about the specifics.
Sure. So one thing I'll say is that in addition to what's here, there are 2 compulsory courses, which are the same across both. We'll get to that in the next slide. But in addition to the compulsory courses, we do have students who come through the program in the course-based program. So those students will take 10 half courses or 5 full courses. And the difference between educational studies and education for change is that in educational studies, you will take some of your electives are specialization electives. So that means that if you are taking Indigenous education, you will take at least 4 courses that are about Indigenous issues or Indigenous education or Indigenous culture. If you're taking environmental education, you will take some about sustainability. You'll also take the foundations course. So we offer a foundations course for each of our specializations that are actually open to everyone if you have an interest, but are compulsory for this program that will really give you a little bit of the background of the area. They'll talk about the major theorists, so you can build on that as you go into your specialization electives. So course-based students, as I said, do complete 10 courses. Now, I'll go to the far right side and talk about thesis. So thesis students take 6 courses, and it's laid out there which you take. There's quite a lot of overlap with the course-based. But instead of taking 10 courses, our thesis students take 6. And then they work with a supervisor within the department, and you don't need to select a supervisor to apply to the thesis route. And a lot of students do work to find a supervisor in the first year, but you are able to name a supervisor to come into the program as well. So they will work on a research project, usually at the conclusion of their courses, that makes a contribution to the research literature. We'll talk a little bit about what that looks like towards the end of the webinar, I think. And in the middle, we have something that's a little unique to the Faculty of Education, and we offer a portfolio route. So the portfolio students take 8 courses, and then they work with a supervisor on a project that they write into a portfolio. And so the portfolio usually has a practical emphasis to it. So for example, some students might make teacher's guides. We've had some students who made really good teachers resources web pages for environmental education. Or they might write a policy paper. The new one that's really popular is podcasts. So I'll talk about that sort of at the end, but it gives you a way to sort of give back to the profession and in a way that would support the teaching usually of other professionals in your area.
Great. Thank you for elaborating on the different routes and sort of what students can anticipate. Going back to sort of those compulsory courses you touched on just briefly, we'll take a peek at that now, and I'll pass back to you to share more of what students can anticipate in that first few semesters.
Sure. Maybe I'll pass this one over to Gerald to talk about the compulsory courses.
Sure. Thanks, Meredith. So in the MEd program, there are some compulsory courses that students have to take regardless of what stream or what field of study they are in, whether it's education for change or educational studies. 2 of those are researching in education 5010 or researching in education for change 5011. So if you are an education for change student, you would likely take 5011. or if you are educational studies, you would likely take 50-10. It doesn't matter all that much, but that's generally what happens. You also need to take one of the research courses. So you can see the list there: quantitative research, qualitative research, Indigenous research approaches, arts integrated research approaches, and research in professional contexts. So take one of those, regardless of what stream you're in. And for international students, you might have on your letter of offer a statement that says you're also required to take 5713, which is a course called Foundations of Graduate Studies Education. This course has been around since about 2015. I'm the one who first started teaching it, and now it's taught by several others. And it's encouraged, although not required, that international students particularly take it in their very first semester or early in on the program. And the reason it's important and the reason it's required for some is because it is designed to provide students with a foundation for understanding what grad studies are in the first place, but also how to do them. So in 5713, regardless of who teaches it, you would be learning skills at the graduate level, such as academic writing. There are ways to write academically and there are ways not to. You would learn how to give presentations and bolster presentation skills. You would learn some of the tools of academic writing, such as summarizing, paraphrasing, and synthesizing information that you're reading. Typically, that would be scholarly information. So learning how to summarize, paraphrase, and synthesize that information is really important in scholarly work. And also equally important is learning how to cite and give credit to your sources and to use a tool called APA, which is short for American Psychological Association. They have a tool for how to actually go about citing and referencing as well. So you learn all of these things, plus you also learn the idea of what it means to be a scholar in the first place, which is to initiate your own research interests and scholarly interests and explore them. It is not about a teacher-centered approach where you're doing what the teacher says. That's not it at all. It's more about teaching students how to explore their own interests and figure out things as they go along and problem solve as students go along. So that's essentially what that course is, and it's really foundational to the rest of the program.
Thank you for sharing more about that. I think that now that we've dove into sort of the compulsory courses within Education for Change, I want to reveal the sample of specialization courses that are available, because this is really where students get to enrich their education, but also craft their own Lakehead degree, as I like to say. I always do note that the list here is just that, a sampling of courses. It's not a guarantee that we are offering these courses each and every term, although I will pass it over to Meridith to start, perhaps to share more about some of these courses, some of the samplings here, and also what you can anticipate in taking in your first couple of years.
Great. So within our programs, like I said, we really try to look at what does it mean to talk about environmental and sustainability education. And a large number of my colleagues are doing research in that area, so their research comes into the design of the classes. But each of these classes has a little bit of a different focus. So for example, climate change in education is our most popular class under this stream. And so it's, how to talk about, that the climate is changing, how to talk about that with children. There's a little bit of activism in there. But then we also have a philosophy course. And then we have classes that you might not think about. So animals in education, right? Having to do with, how do we talk about and how do we maybe utilize or relate with animals in educational context. So that's sort of one way of looking at things. We also have a number of Indigenous education courses. So within these, as I said earlier, for the majority, we're looking at North American Indigenous experiences. So I will actually really encourage students in any of the streams to look at taking one if you're interested. So, and the third is social justice education. So we have a large number of social justice education courses. Some of the really popular ones here, comparative and international education. So looking at different educational experiences, different ways of approaching education, but also, what are the experiences of students in international education? We also have holistic and contemplative education that looks at different ways and perspectives of looking at education outside of like formal schooling. And then one of my colleagues teaches about children's rights. So, topical issues. We also offer additional courses, some terms in the specific research areas of different faculty members. Like this term, we're offering one on AI, which is something that's new, and so it gives us some flexibility. So these are the kinds of courses that you might expect to take. One thing I'll note is that we do have a mixture each term of face-to-face lecture courses and online courses and Zoom courses. So we try to be flexible. You'll need to likely take at least half of your classes face-to-face, but you do have the option to join other students in online courses or Zoom courses to get more of a broader perspective. So, and it helps with flexibility for your time when you're in Thunder Bay and working, on learning what it's like to be in Thunder Bay. So you might have some face-to-face courses on campus. You might also take some courses that are online.
Thank you. I'll jump in and add, I mean, hearing that one of the popular social justice courses is that comparative and international education course, I think having an international audience and students join that and sharing their own perspective in schooling for years in their education systems would be really unique. And I'm sure bringing that perspective and that light, shedding some light onto that will also help some of our Canadian students who are used to the North American or the Western lens. Will be great for discussion, to say the least. I think that's all I wanted to add. Gerald, did you want to add anything to this slide as well?
I don't think I need to add anything to this slide. No, I think I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll shift gears here and we'll chat a bit about educational studies. So as mentioned, obviously this is a very popular route or program, I should say, for international applicants. We do offer the 3 routes similarly to Education for Change, where you could pursue course-based approach, portfolio, or thesis. Once again, I'll pass back to our special guests to share more about what that looks like.
Sure. So you will see that the structure of a course versus portfolio versus thesis doesn't change. What has changed here from the previous slide is that all of the electives that you can select within educational studies, the courses, there's flexibility. So you don't need to take a certain amount of electives in an area, and there's no foundations courses, although you are welcome to take them as an elective. So we do have a lot of students that start in educational studies, and I always thought it far outnumbered the other, but actually when you look at it, by the end of our program, it ends up about 50-50. So we encourage you to explore when you come into the program, try something that maybe you might not have thought would be interesting, because you'll find something there and you might find something that becomes your passion area.
I also know that you mentioned in our offline conversations that sometimes students will take a course that was unfamiliar to them or a topic that may not have been something they immediately gravitated towards. And then they realize it's a spark. It clicks. It's, yes, this is what I want to focus in on. And perhaps that also means that you may want to shift away from course-based approach and actually then go into more of a portfolio or perhaps a thesis-based approach to your studies. And that's exactly why we have a dedicated team of graduate coordinators and several administrative staff members, as well as our chair, of course, to help and assist in that and guide you in that process. They're always willing to sit down and have that conversation to help you understand what your next steps might look like. Shifting gears here. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was going to say, did you want me to give an example?
Yeah, of course. That would be helpful.
So I had a student who came into the program, a course-based student. He took the Foundations of Social Justice Education, and he took a course where he looked at representation of different genders in comic books, right? So then he decided that this would be what he wanted to do for the thesis. And life happened and he ended up in portfolio, but that's okay. So he's doing his portfolio, looking at critical literacy, which is aligned with my area, and using critical literacy to teach social justice topics. And he's doing that by designing a resource for teachers about how to include media, comics, social justice topics, and how to do that in a way that, builds literacy skills in grade 5 and 6 classrooms. So he came through as a course-based student, was never intending to do, a thesis or a portfolio, and he should be done next month. So it does happen where you find something, it's interesting, and you have a passion or you make a connection to a specific, professor, and really is something that we try to help people navigate through, although it's easier to switch earlier in your program. So if you have an inkling that you might be interested in a portfolio or a thesis, wait until you started your program. We usually ask that you take about 3 classes so you can see that you're doing well, because it's a lot more intensive work to do a thesis than to do course-based, and you have to be very self-directed and set good boundaries for yourself and be able to have good time management skills and be dedicated to working on your writing. So we ask, if you're going to change, wait until you've done about 3 courses so you can see that you're doing well, and then come and talk to one of the coordinators or to me, and we can talk to you about program changes.
Can I just add one thing to what you said, Meredith? And that's particularly about the thesis. The fact of the matter is that not everyone should do a thesis, because as Meredith was saying, it takes a certain skill set to do a thesis. And one of the things about doing a thesis is that a student needs to have very strong analytical skills and very strong writing skills, and they need to be already in place. For a lit review section, for a section on methodology and how a research design is going to go, data collection, data analysis, all of that standard research piece, all of those pieces need to be in place. And it tends to take longer to do because all of these pieces need to be in place. And also, and this goes for portfolio as well, sometimes it takes longer than we would like for supervisors to be available. So it's not just a simple matter of, getting a supervisor in one day. It tends to take longer than that. So that also needs to be considered early on in the program. So these are factors to think about if you are wanting to switch to portfolio, or especially if you're wanting to do a thesis.
And to add to that, the person that you approach to supervise needs to have appropriate background to support you. So if it's outside their research area, most supervisors will not supervise you. because they need to know the literature, they need to know the methods, they need to know what's reasonable, because our goal is for you to be successful. And you can't do that if the if there's not a good mix. So sometimes it's not, and sometimes it feels personal, but sometimes it's just that a supervisor is too busy, and they can't give you the support you need. But sometimes it's also that it's not in their area, and ethically, most of us, like, we do have some wiggle room, but like if it's way outside of the area, it's not going to be successful for you. So without a lot of effort from both, and probably too much effort for a 2-year program. So you know, if you are thinking about portfolio and thesis, I don't recommend it to everybody, but you need to have a thought about, what are my goals, and am I, what do I have the ability to work sustained on a project for 6 or 7 or 8 months and not get bored of it, and what are my obligations at home? Like, if you're working a full-time job, it's hard to write, for example. So there are a lot of variations on this, but that's something that you can iron out with the coordinators or with me.
Certainly. And I know we're going to take an opportunity to chat a bit about how students in the various routes will have their hand in research, whether they are best suited for assignment-based research or in the course route, or perhaps going down the full thesis route. Before we do that, I'll take an opportunity to take a quick glance at the compulsory courses within educational studies. Similar to the Education for Change, it's actually a duplication of that side to an extent. Did either of one of you have anything to add or to touch on that's different from what we already shared on the previous slide?
No, just the reminder that if you are going to be a thesis student, you should not take research in professional contexts.
Okay, good to note. And then we want to touch on the fact that there are 2 specializations within educational studies, gerontology as well as gender and women's studies. So these specializations are open to all students, of course, and it really dictates sort of how you select your electives. And you can see on the screen here which electives may be compulsory versus where you have flexibility in terms of whether you're doing a thesis or portfolio route and how you construct your project at hand. Do either of you have any comments to share here?
Yes, just that if you're interested in the aging population and how services are administered, I guess, to aging populations, and the issues around aging, that would be gerontology. It's a joint specialization that we have with a department across campus. Gender and women's studies, if you're interested in feminism or you're interested in gender and ideas around gender, and that would be gender and women's studies. These would be specializations that you would actually declare at the beginning of your program. They're not normally ones that you can switch into, and that's because we work in collaboration with other departments. So you'll see that there are required courses that you would take within their department. And then if you are a thesis or portfolio student, we would find you an appropriate supervisor, and you would, for example, need to pursue your thesis based on research from a feminist perspective, or gender equity perspective. If you're doing coursework, then you need to do, at least with 2 of your courses that need to be pre-approved, you need to do your work with those lenses for your major papers.
Okay, thank you for sharing more. The last slide that we'll chat about today is graduate research. I know this is a popular topic, and students are always curious, how are they going to get involved in research within their graduate studies and education? So I'll pass it back to the 2 of you to share more about what students can anticipate in terms of how to pursue that research, at what level that will be integrated into the program, and all that sort of stuff.
Did you want to start, Gerald? Or would
I
you
can
like me to
start, sure. So the fact of the matter is that most students in this program don't actually go about conducting research per se. And probably most don't work with other people who are conducting research either. Mostly what happens is that students go through the program and they become, or they develop the capacity and the skills to become scholars. Conducting research and being part of research projects is a different sort of thing. And with the exception of taking courses like one of the required methodology courses, whether it's quantitative or qualitative or one of the other three, where you would learn practical steps of conducting research, most don't actually do research outside of courses like that, but certainly not in the rest of the program. For those who are interested in actually conducting research, which is a different thing from being a scholar, if that makes sense, there might be opportunities that some faculty members can offer if they have research grants and they can hire students to do things on their programs. And of course, if a student is a thesis student, then they would be conducting their own research on their own, but in consultation with a supervisor. So those are my initial thoughts on graduate level research. I don't know, Meredith, if you have other things.
Yeah, and we do have some opportunities. Our faculty actually has every year we have a competition that is open to undergraduate students and graduate students and instructors to propose small research studies that are based around teacher education. So that is an option. But by and large, most of the research is done by our thesis students. So I wanted to highlight some of the different sort of areas that our students are doing research in. So quite recently, I have a student, she's an international student, who wanted to look at using collaborative writing to teach English as a second language learners at a university in China. And so she had, she worked with our university and their university to get ethics. And she had a study where she had 16 students and she broke them into groups, 8 pairs, and some of them did synchronous writing where they would write together at the same time, collaboratively online using Tencent. It's kind of like Google Docs, but they'd also be chatting on WeChat. And then she had the other group that was working just on the document together, but they do it at different times. And then they talked about their experiences, and which was much of a different experience than many of them had in school, and whether they found that to be useful or comfortable for them, and the benefits. So there is research being done around language acquisition, for example. We have, and that was at the master's level. We have students doing research across a variety of different areas. So we have, trying to think, doctoral students who are doing work around alternative schooling, right? And what are different ways of approaching schooling. We have doctoral students who are doing work in First Nations communities and sort of what it looks like to be an Indigenous person who is approaching academia, which is, an area that's always been, well, not closed, but difficult for Indigenous scholars to come to. And really, we have a lot of research being done in environmental education. So just a wide variety of things that are being done. And when I first talked to a student, I asked them, what makes you passionate? And what do you see yourself doing? and usually it's really big and we have to bring it down. But then I work to try to connect someone to a supervisor that might be aligned. So, you know, I will say, as someone who started their own master's journey as a course-based student and switched to a thesis program, that it was a very scary switch for me at the time, because I thought, will I be a good enough writer? Um, working with a supervisor was a little bit intimidating. But what I will say about our faculty is that I think all of us are really dedicated to supporting students as researchers. That's actually one of the things that Lakehead itself takes pride in, is trying to support student research. And for a small university, I think we actually do really well. And so if you're interested in doing research and being part of a study, sometimes there are openings for students to work on projects. Not always, but sometimes. We're trying to do a good job of circulating those. You can also look at the Research in Teacher Education Fund funding, which is offered each year for a very small pocket of money. And we've had students who have used that, who are graduate students. So we had one student who looked at integrating gardening into Faculty of Education courses and interviewed different instructors about how they might do that. And now they've actually got another proposal where they're going to go out and they're going to build a community garden, and they're pulling in students from a local school. So that's research that's related to that student's thesis, or dissertation, but isn't that student's dissertation, and something that he's worked to build up the capacity to do with different instructors and faculty members. So I think that's one of the interesting things that you can look forward to, is a culture at least of trying to share research. And I always encourage, within our faculty, we do presentations of research. Every month we have defenses. So when you're a graduate student, we'll start circulating those. And it's always great to have particularly master's students come out to see what it's like to be a doctoral student talking about your research, because you might be thinking ahead down the road.
Thank you so much for adding on to that research in great depth, but also teasing the audience a bit about what they can anticipate when they arrive at Lakehead. I similarly have the same impression in terms of our ability as a smaller to medium-sized institution. I mean, the fact that you knew some of your students' projects and names right off the top of your head goes to show you that we're not just necessarily having these students come and go. We want to see them actually have an impact with their research and take that to the next level. And like you said, they may have really broad ideas about the areas of study they want to focus in on, and then we have to taper that down. You do, not me. And that's where we see people light their own passion, and when they are passionate about the topic that they're researching or passionate about the courses that they're in, they're going to excel and they'll exceed within that.
Can I just add something that I think is quite useful? One of the things that I think is very exciting about grad studies and about post-secondary in general is how it is that everybody and anybody can contribute to scholarly culture. And so attending, as Meridith was saying, attending other students' defenses at the PhD level, even if you're an MEd student and you're not doing a thesis or anything, but just attending presentations like that and being part of it and being part of conversations, or maybe giving a presentation on your own MEd thesis research if you're a thesis student, contributes to scholarly culture. And that is very dynamic and very exciting. And it's one of the best things about being in post-secondary, if you ask me. So anyone and everyone can contribute to that kind of idea of scholarly culture.
Awesome. I'll also remind our audience, if you don't know about Lakehead's Research and Innovation Week, it's something that we host annually, both on the Thunder Bay and Aurelia campus. I had the pleasure of participating as an undergraduate business student in presenting my research related to human resources and an industrial factory here in Thunder Bay. But I know for a fact that our education students are heavily involved in that same research. So whether it's their poster presentations or their 3-minute defenses, Really, really exciting activity and engagement opportunities where, like Dr. Walton and Dr. Lovell-Johnston shared today, there's lots to do and get involved in here. Thanks again for joining us. To our special guests, it's been my pleasure to be your host.
I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, I want to encourage you to comment below or connect with us on social media. We can be found at Lakehead International on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Thanks for watching once again, and hopefully we'll see you at the next live webinar. Bye for now.